Welcome to More Than Meets the Eye with me, Elisabeth Edgell. This is a local community podcast concerning the citizens here and their awareness to issues that we're all currently facing. We do politics, crime reporting, government meetings, voting or voter issues. Basically, there's no issue that is too big for us to tackle. All right, if it affects this community, it affects us, and we want to discuss it. We are a branch of the Manifest Destiny Reporter news media blog, and we are also a part of the Delaware County Community Awareness, the renowned Facebook group. So welcome to Middletown, USA, the heart of Indiana, serving Muncie and their surrounding communities. Hello, everybody. Glad you could come and make it today to our podcast one. We are going to do some general background on me and my special guest, Rick Yencer. Rick, how are you today?
Great.
Good to have you here today. I'm glad you could be a part of it.
Always.
Yes, so we are going to do a little background on me, my connections, Rick and his, and then we're going to discuss some current hot topics here in our community. All right, so let's start out with my background. I grew up in Madison County. I moved over here in 1989 when I went to Ball State. I was a journalism major. I know that's going to shock some people, especially with my renowned cursing issue. But I went to Ball State, and then I went to Ivy Tech. Before I got to Ball State, I had worked at the Elwood Call Leader in Madison County. My aunt was the editor-in-chief there for many years. And so I learned everything I knew about newspapers and news back in the olden days when they actually came off the actual presses. That was a really cool thing to watch back then. And then I learned everything I know about politics from my grandmother, who was a staunch Democratic woman. And so I came here to college, and then I've gone recently to Indiana Wesleyan. I was working on a digital media marketing degree, and I'm about a year under receiving that. So I updated myself, in other words, because you have to, right? So Rick, what's your background? Where did you go to school?
Well, thank you, Liz. I grew up here in Indiana, just down the road in a little place called Rawl. Went to a township school. Grandma was the cook. Uncle was the principal. And started on a farm, but then grew up in a brand new home that Dad built because he built the country. Mom's family were pioneers, fed the country. Yes. And they always wanted us to do better, so we did. We went to Ball State. I had a mentor in high school, Ed Henderson, who taught me how to tell stories. And he said, you were always gifted because you could sit down and tell a story in just a few words. And little did I know, after Ball State, 35 years at monthly newspapers, both at the morning paper and then the combined paper, the Gannett, created in 1995, with the digital change of everything being on this little magic box. We can find that those quick stories now that are required on Facebook, Twitter, and these other social medias is the future, along with good images too. And like I say, I've helped. This is probably the second or third media I've helped in the last decade since I moved on from the paper. Muncie Free Press was not only print, but it was early digital too. And we built that up to thousands of views. And then when I met you, you were already there. And you are the future because you have over 20,000.
Yeah, we're about to hit 22,000, but there's another 800 waiting to get in after that. So we will be real close when we hit 22,000 in the Delaware County Community Awareness Group. We'll be at 23 real soon after that. So I'm looking for growth like that.
And that's what we're doing here. We're growing this by giving you more information.
Yeah, there's a certain lack of information these days. There's a breakdown between the governments and the policymakers to the people.
Exactly, because we've gone to meetings this month, Liz.
Yes, we have.
You know, the school board,
Mhm.
city council, others,
Yeah.
and nobody goes to the meetings. They don't participate. They don't engage, and it is their money, and that's what we always tell. Take care of our kids, teach them, and give us our money, simply put.
Right. So some of your first projects, you mentioned that you work for the Muncie newspapers, and you also worked with a project I mentioned in our intro, Middletown, USA. Maybe you could tell a little bit of that and how it affected you with one of your major projects.
Well, thanks for reminding me, because I left out our global media, Muncie in 150. It started as a story about Muncie during the sesquicentennial and what the community and leaders did. We put in the front a little bit of history, and at the end we saw a prophecy back in 15, before these events happened, that schools were failing because they were running out of money and they didn't have leadership.
And this was in 2015.
Yeah, this was in 15 when, after closing Southside, a few years later, which people left Muncie schools because they didn't want to be at one high school again, even though in this community there was one high school a century ago. But we also told the story about how we had a series of no contest elections. And that breeds corruption in itself, and you saw a few years ago that that's what happened. You know, government became corrupt because nobody was participating. Nobody cared.
Power corrupts absolutely.
Exactly.
Right? I have heard that adage said most of my life, but never ever have I seen it so played out in front of me as I see today. It is in a system that was built for checks and balances. It's pretty heavy-sided in one way or another.
Exactly, because again, it's history repeating itself. Back in the 20s, Doc Bunch, who was the mayor, mail fraud, and he was a Republican.
Gambler.
And a gambler, and kind of part of that days where the Ku Klux Klan ran Indiana because they invested in politicians, usually the conservative ones.
I remember that. I grew up in Elwood.
Oh,
so,
exactly,
yes,
sundown town.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a whole breakdown between the powers that be and the actual community. I know from my grandparents living there and family that not everybody was on board with that way of thinking. But when they terrorized the whole area, you really couldn't speak out. And so times are different today. Today, you can speak out. You can make a difference. One person can change things. Is that not true?
I would hope so, but if you've seen recent protests, they have become as violent as they were in the last century and in the 60s when we fought over civil rights, a foreign war, and other things that we hold true to freedom and our rights.
I was pretty proud of Muncie. We didn't succumb to the crazy violent protest even when we had the protest back during the pandemic. We had 4,000 people that gathered peacefully and protested, and I was really proud of our city then. We all showed up. And that's really what we're here to do with what we're doing with Manifest Destiny Reporter and Delaware County Community Awareness is, we want you to show up, and we want to entice you to do that. We know that the meetings went online during the pandemic, and we're grateful for that. Don't get me wrong. It was much better to be able to see the meetings at all than not to see them, period. Instead, we have come to a place where now people are resting on their laurels or morals or resting on their keister. I don't know how you want to word it, but
Well, actually, I would say that during the pandemic and just here lately, they're doing things they shouldn't be doing as far as government and education, that they're spending money they don't have. They are borrowing money in the millions of dollars for things like a stadium, a new football stadium down at Central, or that $17 million sanitation garage up on the hill, even though it was badly needed because they needed special equipment to fix the natural gas powered trucks. The outside of
we didn't
iron.
really need a fence to do that, did we?
Well, I have a friend that made a couple $100,000 under that iron fence. Those are expensive items that they did not need for nothing more than a garage for trash trucks.
Right.
But regardless,
Or wasn't that done right after
During-
the FBI or during the FBI indictments for many of their department heads and leaders there in the sanitary district?
it was that administration that started the project.
That's
the
what I
current
thought.
administration inherited, and they continued it.
And that just blew me away that we would spend $17.1 million on the sanitation department that just robbed us. But, I don't make the rules.
There.
Have they ever addressed that this is off?
If you watch a sanitary board meeting on Facebook, you'll see that they only glorify what they're doing now, which is doing simple maintenance on sewers and drains. And
Their job, in other words.
Well, exactly.
Okay, so we're supposed to, and where I come from, doing your job is a requirement of you. That is not something that you get kudos for or pats on the back. You're supposed to do your job. That's the very least you can do. If you go above and beyond, then maybe we could see about, shining you up for an award or something. But in my book, when you're either elected, appointed, or hired in to do a job, you should do that.
Liz, that's why they call it public service. They serve the public.
It's like, so maybe it should be done with the servant's mind,
Well,
like they talk about it in church, right?
maybe.
I even learned that in Indiana Wesleyan. I had to do actually a research paper on what that meant to me. Wonder how our leaders would do if we would have them write that. Either that or ethics, one of the two. That would be an interesting report to get from our leaders, don't you think?
Well, if we can get their attention.
Yeah, good luck with that.
But let's get on with
right.
some of the issues that you found in your survey.
So,
and
we're going to go on to let's explain Manifest Destiny Reporter and Delaware County Community Awareness just for a moment. And then we're going to go on and discuss what brought each one of us into serving the community the way we do. Delaware County Community Awareness, like I said, I started that in 2018. And when I did, I had in mind one mission statement, which has been my mission statement from the beginning and is currently the mission statement today. It is changing the world one person at a time, starting with yourself, and then an outreach to your community. And what I mean by that is, first you have to change you. The two things that I focus on in Delaware County Group was, number one, I wanted everyone to be aware of the actual state that we were working in. So much of our media around here has been purchased, is what a term I'll use loosely, by a political party. And it gives the information that it wants you to have. What we want to give the community is all of the information. We wanted to show you, without having to editorialize, what we were looking at in this community as far as our real issues. And the pandemic kind of interrupted that, but yet it kind of showcased things too and made things come more into focus. What we discovered is, with the police scanner, we can show you exactly what's going on, and you can listen to it for yourself. And when people started listening to it, they couldn't believe all the things that the paper never mentioned, or that were never talked about by our leaders, or ever made the news at all. And often that's shootings and car chases and all kinds of things. many drug overdoses in a row of an evening. We've heard all kinds of things on the scanner. And people were like, oh no, it's so much worse now. It's not now. It's been this way for a minute. You just weren't aware of it now. That's what we're bringing is the awareness of what really we're looking at. Once we've done that, which has been about a little over 4 years now, because it was June of 2018 that I started it. So the second thing that we showcase is all of those people that pop in and want to poke fun and be a troll and make comments and crack jokes. That is your opposition to change. And there's a huge amount of opposition to change here in Muncie, isn't there, Rick?
Exactly.
Would you say that's with the people or with the leaders, or would that be equal to you?
That involves everybody, whether it's here, there, nationally, around the world.
Are our leaders the people too?
They are the people.
That's where they come from,
and they should
right?
be and stand by the people. I mean, it's like the Constitution. We the people.
That's right. All right, well, with that, I'm going to close out our first segment, and when we come back, we're going to discuss that some more and how Rick and I felt driven in different ways, but we end up on the same page to work together to help bring more awareness to the people. Give us a second and listen to our sponsor coming up. They got some good news for you, and we will talk at you when we come back. Hello. Have you heard of us? I bet you have. We are that one Facebook group you keep hearing about. You know, the one with the mean admin, LOL. We are Delaware County Community Awareness, and we are almost 23,000 local community members here in Delaware County, Indiana. We are the first and original group of its kind locally. Although there are many copycats out there, we have a unique formula that brings organic word-of-mouth members, and we're a private group with a long waiting list to join. We bring you current events, breaking news, road conditions, election news, local politics and updates, live police gators calls, developing stories, and we get the story first. Over 76% of our 23,000 members visit our group every day. We have over 10,000 comments a day, and our reach is far and wide. We have more members than the city Facebook or the local newspaper. We also teach, guide, mentor, and do marketing and advertising as it relates to today's changing world. We only ask these 3 things of our members. Number 1, be a good person. Number 2, be a good neighbor. Number 3, be a good citizen. And we don't charge for the news. The news is about the community members, so charging them seems petty and greedy. We're journalists who are nonpartisan, not in anyone's pocket, and we own ourselves. We want to unite our community. It starts here. Delaware County Community Awareness. If it's important to you, it's important to us. 0. Hello, everybody, and we are back with More Than Meets the Eye with Elisabeth Edgell and my special guest and friend, Rick Yencer. We spoke a little bit earlier about Rick's background as a newspaper man. He's also an author and what do you like to put at the end of that?
Outlaw.
Outlaw. There you go. All right. So he was going to tell us a little bit about how, after you retired, what made you stay involved with the city and the county and politics around here. Are you involved in politics personally?
Yes. Like I say, after I left the paper, I had a spouse I took care of for a few years, and also I never gave up that storytelling. So we started with another online product called Muncie Free Press, and helped with that for a few years. But when I grew up, I always heard stories of my grandpa, who worked in a glass factory down the road in Hartford City, and in the Depression, he had lost his wife, and he had 8 kids, including my dad, that had to raise, and he always took people in. And like Mom and Dad always said, you need to take care of those others. And that's what we've done with the help of others. In the last few years, we've helped with not only taking care of people in need, but we got involved politically because my mom's uncle was governor of the state during the Depression,
wow.
Clifford Townsend. And he did two significant things. He made sure buses were painted yellow, and he electrified rural Indiana because he lived on a farm up in Blackford County where he's buried. And he also knew that without utility, without help, our agriculture would fade. And of course, he also helped with the food effort. He was an advisor to FDR in the 40s to help with the food effort during World War II. But yeah, I'm always, in the last few years, I have helped a lot of people in need. And I still do work with other groups, whether it's the Recovery Cafe or Brianna's Hope and other groups where people either are homeless or addicted or in need that kind of help.
That's amazing. I like that you mentioned those recovery groups too. They're pretty active in my Delaware County Community Awareness Group as well. And Brenda, one of our moderators, actually runs the Gaston chapter of Brianna's Hope, I believe. Mm-hmm. So that's something that's real important to her, and I know she gets good results through that program too. So I understand what you're saying. I mean, I kind of touched on it before, but my grandmother, who was a Democratic woman and very involved, this woman was in war, in the front lines in the Army hospitals, and she met my grandfather, who was in the Navy there, when he had his throat cut. So both of them are very driven to change the community they live in, because both of them felt like they had blood, sweat, and tears invested in this area and in our lives.
Exactly. They were the greatest generation.
And they knew what suffering was with the Great Depression, and they knew what having plenty was, and they knew what they had fought for. I think that's what we're missing here a little bit today, and that's what I try to bring. Is I was raised by those people, drugged to every Democratic function that you could get drugged to. Yes, we made crafts, and we did everything we could do to support the people that we were supporting. And she took me there to show me that that's about community. People hear politics and they think it means a whole nother thing than it really means. Politics is not this all-encompassing subject that we shouldn't touch because it might offend. Politics isn't about, I remember a time when Democrats and Republicans could share a meal and not have any issue because they understood that was their belief, and it was more important that they believed in something than to believe in nothing. And we didn't care as long as you were involved. Whatever you resided and aligned with was your thing.
That was just a moment ago with people like Dick Lugar and Lee Hamilton.
You're right. One
of the best stories I told lately on Monthly 150 Facebook was they, over at Taylor, they had a gathering with Dick and Lee, and they sat there and talked like people did just a generation ago. Now it's turned into such division, and we can see that division here locally too with the parties. I spent 10 years, many people probably know and remember, running as a Democrat in a predominantly Republican town, and it was always like a 2-to-1 because out there in Yorktown, it's a pay-to-play community. 2 golf courses, a sports center that was built on public dollars that was given away to membership-only groups. And again, that's not unlike a lot of other communities in Indiana that are based on that concept of pay-to-play.
But being raised like you and I were, where we were taught to get involved because we could change things, or we could keep things from changing if that was necessary, whatever was the necessary thing. I never thought that was out of my scope of opportunity. A lot of people today say the one thing to me the most, which is, it don't matter. You can't change nothing. And not only is that bad grammar, but it's not true.
Oh, yes,
I have changed things at one city council meeting by getting up and speaking. Just me, not even planning on speaking that day. Just got up and said what I felt my councilman needed to hear that they hadn't considered yet.
Just look what crowds did here in last few years around Muncie.
That's
A
true.
crowd showed up for a steel dust plant
That's
on the
right.
old Warner Gear site, and the government didn't know what to do.
There was more people that could fit into the meeting house.
On the other side, a group of people showed up they didn't want solar farms on their farm next door.
Right.
And the government complied. Don't ever think that you can't go to a public meeting and not make a difference, because by law they have to listen. And remember, it's our money.
Right, I agree with that, and that's why I do what I do. First, I'm here to protect our public information and the Freedom of Information Act, which I support completely. Matter of fact, I'll be utilizing that soon, which we'll talk about later, but I teach people how to do that and where to do it at and in what manner to do it in. These are not things that should be done willy-nilly. These are things that you should go and do in a controlled fashion on a consistent basis over and over and over. Keep showing up to the meetings. I tell you what, when they look out over the meeting and they see the place packed, they're sweating it. And they look out over the meeting and they see one or two people there. Well, as I saw with the Dream with Dan that we both attended, when you look out over, when you look out over a meeting and you see 3 people sitting there,
Right.
we weren't even allowed to talk, were we?
Well,
But when a crowd shows up, it's pretty hard to deny the
Exactly.
citizens' right to talk. And just like at that Dream with Dan, they took my questions on a note card and decided which ones they wanted to read, and they changed one of the questions. So, don't let your government speak for you.
Liz, that's all about control. They want to control you and control the message before you even can get up. And we've seen the spectrum. Schools
It's true.
barely want anybody to speak. City
They make
council.
you speak at this school board meetings at the beginning before they've discussed anything.
Right. And they've changed their rules
Like,
for us.
how does that work? Like, that's why I don't sign up, because when I get there, I don't have anything to say because I'm waiting to see what you say about this. That's why I showed up, because you're going to talk about it. How come we can't talk right after?
Well, again, that's control, because some do it before the meeting, some do it after the meeting. And like I say, the one that does it the most is allowing public open speaking is Muncie City Council.
They are. I want to give them kudos for that.
And that's because of Jeff Robinson, who's a progressive Democrat.
Amen.
And he works for Schaefer Leadership.
He does.
And he is a true leader because he was one of the people that pointed out it wasn't really a good idea to put a solar farm on a old factory site that is an EPA.
And he
slated
pointed
for
out those
EPA
numbers
cleanup.
did not match.
Exactly.
The numbers did not add up for that. And then we have several other people there who have been instrumental, like Roger Overby. Roger was the previous person who helped get all of our equipment and our city online to begin with. Roger did a lot of work with the communications area before this administration, and getting city meetings and that equipment even well known to the city so that we could have meetings outside or on video during the pandemic. Roger did a lot of work with that, and he's now a city council person in District 6, I believe.
In your neighborhood.
Yeah, my neighborhood. So I wanted to give him a shout out for that, because we're talking about communication and information and how it gets to the people. And I know there are several city council members that we didn't mention, but they all care about getting the communication out, the information out. They may not know how to do it or how that works, but they're all on board with that, I believe. I don't think any of them, I don't feel, keep us held back by information.
I think most have good hearts and they want to do for the people. And I'm glad you mentioned Roger, because he's a pioneer. He is the reason that you can see a lot of these meetings on Facebook
Amen.
or cable TV.
That's right.
Because he was a pioneer when local government and the schools still weren't ready. And then with the pandemic and Zoom, it became almost mandatory.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
there's going to be some online accounting for.
And it's so amazing because, previously there was a whole sect of people that I discovered with Delaware County Community Awareness that were not available. They couldn't watch these meetings because they're homebound for one reason or another. They're ill, they're in bed.
Or they don't have Wi-Fi.
Or they don't have Wi-Fi. Or the ones that can't get out are able to watch online. The ones that can get out, the pandemic, they kind of pushed us to staying at home and being afraid to go out. I remember that was a problem with the last major vote around here, and the mail-in ballots, where all voter fraud takes place, by the way, is the mail-in ballots. So we are getting this community any information we can in any format they want it. We are going to be offering that to you with this podcast, with our groups, with our pages, with our news blog, and we are going to be bringing that together really soon with a new citizen hub that we will be creating just for you.
Really?
Yes. So we are going to take another short break real quick. I know our sponsor wants to get another word in. And when we come back, we are going to discuss the results of a community poll that I did in Delaware County Community Awareness. And we're going to see what Rick and I's responses would be to that question. So when we come back, we will get on that.
Cool.
All right. Talk to you soon. Delaware County Community Awareness announces our new affordable option for election ad campaigns. Political ad campaigns with our partners are either $100, $175, or $250 packages in the basic, standard, and pro levels. Look for other great advertising deals with proven and transparent growth and engagement with seasoned professionals. If you're a small local business owner, we will underprice any other ad platform. We want to help you be able to grow your business. It starts with our belief in you. Information will be out after the election about our local business marketing platform. We work in partnership with Electric Lizard Promotions. Electric Lizard Promotions. Shock them. We do. Welcome back to More Than Meets the Eye with Elisabeth Edgell and our special guest and friend, Rick Yencer. Rick's from Yorktown currently, well, most of your life, right?
No, just about a half century.
Okay, half century. That's not much. And we are here on the east side today. And what we discovered was we did a community poll in the Delaware County Community Awareness Group. And it brought out some interesting points. And then Rick and I both have other points that, because we've been out to the meetings and we are got our ear to the ground in this area, that we may have some points of things that are of interest to you that you might not be aware of. So we'll add those to the poll. The poll question was, what do you think is the most important issue facing Delaware County today, currently? And so the people in the group, which is about 22,000 people in this area, and I believe the city has 65,000 people in it, the county around 85, 90.
No, more like 112.
Okay. I know it's less than it was last year. I do know that. Because it was about 125,000 in the county. So I know that Ball State affects that, though, whether they're here or whether they're not. So we're talking about a third of Muncie is represented out of Delaware County in the group. So the first thing that people said that they thought that the number one thing that we needed to worry about right now was drugs. And that was with 7 votes. Then we had shootings and crime, which, that's good because that's been a big thing in our community lately, much more than previous years or even previous months. And then I was glad to see that people were aware that the homeless situation, which is third, is a big, big thing that we're facing right now, and that is so true. And with homeless goes the next thing, and that would be housing, or the lack of affordable housing is how it was worded by most people. And then the next on the list that affects your housing is, of course, your job. I know people think that there's a plethora of jobs available out there, and there are. But we're talking about jobs that actually pay a decent wage. And there is a lack of those for people that don't have a specialized education or something like that. Just in general work availability.
Well, remember too, Indiana is one of the last that have $7.25 as minimum wage.
That's
Many
right.
others have gone to $15.
How long has it been since they've had a minimum wage increase in Indiana?
Years.
I was gonna say,
Literally.
so yeah, that's been tossed around, but I just don't see it happening anytime soon.
But you see it in trade and commerce, because go to any Taco Bell or a KFC and we're paying $12 to $13 because we don't have enough kids.
That's
or we
right.
don't have enough people.
That's right. So the next thing, these all got to mention, and I wanted to mention everybody's responses, to be fair, because I think everybody has something to offer here. And when I ask for opinions, I'm expecting opinions, and I'm gonna get yours out there. So they spoke on respect for your town. I agree with that one myself. I think that's a very fine thing. I don't think it's the most important issue that we're facing, but I think it's definitely one of the top ones. Without that, what's the point in what we're doing here?
Exactly.
You know. Then the next thing was cleanup. I think I've seen an upswing in the cleanup efforts around here lately. Each neighborhood does that. I think twice a year cleanup in their neighborhoods. And I plan on being a part of mine this year since I've moved now. And then do your part. That means to get involved. And I also see that as a very big issue that this city is facing, the lack of citizen involvement. We cannot hold them accountable if we're not there to hear what they're doing. And then be a kind neighbor. I'm just going to, put that one underneath the category kindness. Kindness goes a long way, and compassion. Remembering that because you may not be homeless doesn't mean other people aren't in a different place than you in life. And if we have it to give, we should do that. And then unity was the very last thing that was mentioned. And that is another cornerstone of why I've created the entities I've created here, is because I want to unite my community. We are a divided community, are we not?
Exactly. Just like the state, the country, and the world.
Well, yeah, and it's been, being divisive here with our parties, with our resources, with lots of things, is why we're kind of in the position that we're in.
Like I say, I don't think as far as in politics that party matters that much anymore. It's people that get a community together, and you can see it on both sides. It started with the Tea Party with Republicans here, and a group called Citizens for Good Government, which is a conservative group. And then on the other side, it progressed to things like Muncie Resist, that are a group of progressive Democrats who are, I always remember they showed up for Bernie Sanders meetings not that long ago, but they are mostly academic and they are liberal. Because again, in this state, without really a statewide Democrat party and little means and no state offices, it's difficult to get the old groups, whether it was labor, public employees, teachers. It's hard to get that group out because they either don't vote or they become conservative, and that's fine too. But given Indiana has the lowest voting record in the last decade or so, we've got to do better.
And the fact that many of our local elections, I believe personally, that you can change things at the local level. That's when your involvement in politics should be big, because it immediately affects your schools, your roads, your taxes at the DMV, so many things, just across the board. And it affects those things, immediately. And so what I think is getting involved there is those races get pretty close, don't they, because of lack of voters.
If, again, people turn out.
Right. But if they don't, sometimes it could be 1,000 votes that separate the winner and the loser.
Exactly.
Less than. Have you seen less than 1,000 votes?
Oh, I've seen more, much more. In 20, it's what I tell both parties. Back in 80, when I was working the paper, Reagan beat Carter in Delaware by 3,000 votes. 2 years ago, Trump beat Biden by 6,000 votes in Delaware. And that is a significant change in a couple generations over
Sure
40
is.
years.
And there's been changes in voting stats across the board. I mean, right now, I don't know for sure. But I know last year, women made up the biggest amount of registered voters in the state and across the country. And that's a big change that we've seen, for the first time in our decade. It's not been that primarily in the past. So more women are getting involved. I'm afraid that after the pandemic and all the fighting everyone did there, that people will get disillusioned. And so that's why we're doing what we're doing here. There's a few other issues that didn't get mentioned by the people in the poll that we wanted to touch on today. We're not going to go into them greatly. You may see some podcasts coming up about them primarily. But as far as current events go, I know that you wanted to talk about education and literacy, Rick.
Right.
All right.
We've been to a couple meetings lately that point the need for better reading among elementary students. One, it was a joyful event a week ago when Muncie Public Library kicked off a little trail around their community garden over at the Marion Hunt next to Southview School. And they had an after-school program I didn't know about. It was called Great Adventures. And nice. They have about a dozen kids in elementary that they come in and do reading, writing, and other, basic skills to be able to increase the reading literacy, because we fell into about the 2/3. The recent Indiana Department of Education rolled out iRead, which is third grade reading levels, and 1 in 5 kids statewide can't read. And that's about 60-some% here in Delaware, which sometimes kind of matches the same figures we see in income and poverty, that 1 in 5 in the county are poor. They can't take care of themselves. They can't pay their utilities. They live, even if they do have a paycheck.
And so they need these extra programs to be
exactly. And there are extra.
That way they have the same opportunities everyone else gets later in life.
Well, if people would just notice that in the last 2 years, the federal government has provided literally billions for local communities, whether it's for roads, whether it's for improvements like the American Rescue Plan. And we've seen how the money's been spent around here, and it's not necessarily for the people. It's either to bail out the government or build more infrastructure and utilities. And a lot of those tax districts have the money for that. That's what we give them in terms of property, income, and other taxes we pay any given day. So I'm still hoping that people are going to show up, not only at the poll in November, but also show up here during these budget meetings.
That's right. That's another thing we wanted to talk about.
Yeah, we're already in the budget season for 23.
Yeah, they would just release the proposed budgets for the city,
right,
the sanitation department, and the bits, right?
Right.
So those are out, and I will post those links on this podcast when we're done, so that you can go check those out. Check out those numbers. Look at where your money is being spent. Look at the income that they're taking in. Hold these people accountable. This is their job. Actually, the city council's number one job is to set the budget for the following year. Now, in previous years, when they have not done that job, what happens? We revert back to the previous year's budget. That hurts growth. That hurts infrastructure. That hurts everything, because, as we all know, every year it gets more expensive to live. I noticed that none of their budgets went down when we eliminated a bunch of jobs. out of different departments. When we're eliminating salary positions, I expected some budgets to go down. They did not.
Liz, being someone that's covered government and schools a lifetime, budgets spending for government schools never goes down. Taxes never go down. Not just because of what they spend, but an assessment system that is so old that now you have one person that will raise the value of your property whether you did anything or not, and this includes farmland, homes, businesses, industries, 2 to 3%, and over a decade, that's like 20%.
That's it.
And you're living in the same house, you're farming the same land, you're working the same business.
Well, we're going to do some more. We're going to do a podcast that directly deals with some of the numbers that we're looking at. We're going to do a special budget podcast. So we will have more on that coming up. And the last two things, kind of one leads into the other. One was crime and shooting, which was mentioned by people in the poll. But these shootings and the crime that's been going on recently in our community, especially in Muncie, has been off the charts. I believe we had 17 in July. I don't know what we had in August yet, but it was up there. We've had a lot of deaths resulting from them shootings, and they've been all different types of ages and people covered, down from veterans to 19-year-old kids. So we've had a plethora of those. And because of those shootings and the crime we've seen recently, which if you listen to the scanner, there's more than just shootings going on. There's a lot of domestic violence. There's a lot of it. There is a lot of theft. There's a lot of break-ins. There's a lot of drug-related issues in this community. We hear the ODs every other day or so. So that led into our Dream with Dan last one that we had that we were invited to as press. And the police chief and the mayor using that crime in our community to roll out a new program called the License Plate Reader. The License Plate Reader is brought to you by a company named Flock, and you can do your research. As a matter of fact, I require it. I would like you to Google Flock, lawsuits. And I would like you to see that the top 10 results there, 8 of those 10 are problems with it. The problem that we're having with it and why we believe this is a hot topic right now isn't because I'm against the police or I'm not doing anything wrong, so I don't have anything to hide kind of mentality, all right? I'm not against anything. What I am not a fan of is anything that costs us our individual rights. And so the problem we have was with the way this was done. The way it was done was we avoided taking this to the Board of Works or the City Council, which would be the usual procedure when you're bringing a program like this to the awareness of the public. Because of both of those things, public would be allowed to get up and talk and speak on it, would they not?
Exactly, but you were at the meeting and you heard the government and the provider, Flock Safety, say this is just a trial.
Yeah, 60-day
trial. And no contracts are being signed. No money is being transferred.
Less than 2 weeks later, they're already putting
And again, as Liz mentioned, just Google Flock Safety and see the billions of dollars they've made in just 5 years.
And their main program is that they don't want you to bring it to council. They don't want
No, that's how they've set it up in some of these other communities.
It's
I'm not saying they did
marketed.
it in everyone, but
No.
you would be amazed at this surveillance technology and how widespread it is in just the last 5 years throughout the country.
And my issue is that the person that buys the program sets the policy, and that would be the chief of police here or the mayor.
But we don't have that yet.
And the fact of the matter is, the chief of police, last time I checked, was not on the legislative branch of our government, and he does not set policy unless it is being set with the union steward of police, and then he helps them write that, but not in our policy as far as our privacy goes.
Oh, as far as,
Right.
our freedom.
And so also the police last year closed a lawsuit which has a gag order and no talk about it order on it. but settled a lawsuit about where the police ran citizens' names up to and including the outgoing city clerk and the outgoing fire chief of the previous administration, run their names through NCIC without probable cause.
Exactly.
And that is a violation of our individual rights. And those citizens all got together and did a class action suit, and they rightly won. But we don't know to what extent. Also, our police department has been sending the city the brunt of their handiwork with police brutality lawsuits that have gone against our city and that are still ongoing right now. I believe they sentenced in January on that. So that's going to cost us money. I do not think that the police need to be setting policy when it comes to my personal private information and who they share that information with, because that's also a possibility with this kind of information.
Liz, I agree. Certainly we need no more liability involving law enforcement. We need some kind of oversight, and we also need to know where they are watching. They said, now this going back to the meeting, you remember hearing too, we're going to put it in the entrances and exits of Muncie. Well, I thought one of your members found one down at Willard and Hackley.
Yes.
Next to Punchy's old beauty shop and Tom Carey's barber shop.
Last I checked, that wasn't an entrance or an exit.
And like I say, I've heard both good and bad from families that live in industry that yes, we want this to be able to stop crime in our neighborhood, and others are worried about the use of it to violate their privacy.
And as long as the city puts an ordinance out that restricts the government use of this and that protects our individual rights and has consequences for breaking those policies, then I'm good.
Exactly.
Do what you want. I'm happy with them then. Make it happen, and then I will have faith that they're being used to help me.
I want to see this brought before a public forum so people can talk about.
And that's what was circumvented here.
Well, it's again, this is the sales technique is very interesting from a public standpoint, because they're out here hustling technology that's watching you, and some communities have gone through a public procedure, others do the 60-day trial, others don't even tell.
Yeah, there was commissioners of one town that weren't even aware when they were going up.
Lafayette was one town that really didn't tell people they're putting up these
but see, that's what happens when people aren't at meetings and aren't paying attention, and that's what we're here to do. One more thing I wanted to mention, and then we're going to have to leave off with this podcast. We mentioned the public hearings. Those are going to be that start on September 12th.
Budget hearings for city department or tax districts is September 12th in City Hall.
And what time is that?
That will be at 7 o'clock.
Okay, good. I thought the meeting for
Delaware County is going to start reviewing county budgets for the jail, the sheriff, for the courts, for county offices like roads and highways. That'll start up next Wednesday, the 7th at 8:30.
And then the city council meeting is...
And that's on the 12th, but both have public hearings where you can speak about how much they're going to tax you, and those documents are online both at City of Muncie and Delaware County Government.
I'll post all the documents there. I've already started downloading them, so I will post PDFs of those so that you can print them. That way you can print them out, take them to the meeting with you. Go through them with them. Make them fine-tooth comb it. Find out why. If you have a question, get up and ask. They can't take away your birthday. They can't eat you. I mean, I do it all the time. Rick does it all the time. Don't be afraid to, if you don't understand something. I didn't start speaking because I knew everything. I started speaking because I didn't understand, so I wanted clarification. You can do that too. You don't have to know everything there is to know about politics to go get involved, do you?
Exactly.
This is how you learn.
And the answer is always no unless you ask.
That's right. And so here at More Than Meets the Eye, we are always going to ask them questions. We are always going to take a deeper dive into some of these issues. And we are going to go on the road and try to meet you where you land in your neighborhoods, because we want to remember that this is about the people. I think our government and our administrations now sometimes forget that. And so we're going to keep showing that to them, both at the polls, at the meetings, and anywhere else I get an opportunity to insert that.
That's just marvelous. Hey, I can't thank you enough
Thanks
for letting
for coming.
me join in the conversation.
We
And we'll
appreciate
be
it.
out there, like I always say, even though we always know somebody's always watching. And we'll be watching too.
That's
so thank
right.
you.
All right, thank you, everybody. We will see you in the group and on the Manifest Destiny Reporter page. Have a great evening.